I absolutely love this time of the year. Walking around, looking at the leaves with a PSL in hand just never gets old. I also have so many amazing video game related memories tied to this time of the year, and one of my all-time favorites has to be the release of Pokemon X and Y back in October of 2013. These games were home to so many firsts for me personally. I went to my first ever midnight release to get this copy of Pokemon X. I did my first trade evolutions with actual real friends instead of just trading Pokemon to myself using 2 consoles. And of course, this was also the first game where I found full odds shiny Pokemon and even started to dip my toes into a few shiny hunts to varying degrees of success. So join me as I take a little trip down memory lane and talk about some of my shiny Pokemon memories from the Kalos region. But before we get into the shinies, I have to talk about my main team here. I chose Froakie as my starter, and this was one of those Pokemon generations where I knew who I was going to choose from the day they revealed the starters. Froakie is such a cool little guy, and Greninja is by far my favorite fully evolved starter from Gen 6. Clearly I made a good choice because little did I know this guy would even become a playable character in Smash. I really like this team. I feel like I had a good mix of old and new Pokemon, and as you can see, it's literally half and half old and new Pokemon. In most Pokemon games, my team switches up quite a bit throughout my adventure, but in X version here, I didn't do that. These guys carried me through pretty much my whole adventure, so it's really nice to get to see them again and pet Greninja's weird tongue scarf for the first time in over a decade. Anyway, I could talk about these games for ages, so before I go off on another tangent, let's just get straight into the point of this video. Here are all of my shiny Pokemon on my original copy of Pokemon X version. Let's start this off with the least interesting shiny I have, and that is this Gengar. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Gengar, but not only is shiny Gengar one of those Pokemon whose shiny form barely looks any different from the original, this particular shiny Gengar was actually just an event Pokemon that was distributed through a special card with a download code on it that you could pick up at select retailers. I was actually working at GameStop back when these 3DS distribution events were happening, and I actually had a lot of fun handing these cards out to people and seeing how excited they would get. It was wholesome moments like this that actually made me enjoy working at GameStop sometimes. This Gengar also came with its Mega Stone, meaning it could Mega Evolve. And thankfully, shiny Mega Gengar looks way cooler than shiny regular Gengar. Alright, from here on out we're just going in order of when I obtained the rest, starting with this shiny Dwebble. I met this little guy in the Friend Safari. I remember I was in the car with my family and not fully paying attention to the game when I encountered this guy. I thought I heard the shiny sound effect when I was looking away from the screen, but since shiny Dwebble looks so similar to regular Dwebble, I thought maybe it was just my imagination. I ended up catching him in a quick ball just in case, and to my surprise, he actually was shiny. This was my first ever random encounter with a full odds shiny Pokemon. I remember reading online that the Friend Safari might have slightly higher shiny odds, but I'm still not 100% sure if this was ever proven to be true or not. I am aware that starting with this generation, shiny odds overall were increased from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 4,096, effectively doubling your chances to find a shiny Pokemon, which is a huge part of the reason why shiny hunting exploded in popularity during the 3DS era of Pokemon games. But hey, I'm definitely not complaining. Next up was this super handsome shiny Charizard that you can see right here, and I think this one might just be my favorite shiny of all time, and not just because of how cool he looks, but also the story behind it. The day I encountered this guy, one of my friends in high school was showing me how he had been hatching Charmander eggs using the Masuda method in hopes of finding a shiny, and he had been at it for a few days at that point. So, that day when I got home, I once again hopped into the Friend Safari, and I kid you not, my first encounter upon entering the tall grass was a shiny Charmeleon. I don't think I've ever had a crazier moment of pure luck like that in my entire life. It felt like my 3DS had been listening to my conversation earlier that day. Anyway, when I went to school the next day, I ended up not telling my friend because I didn't want to make him feel bad about not finding a shiny Charmander yet, since he was really putting the work in. Thankfully, he found one eventually, and once he did, I showed him how awesome my shiny Mega Charizard X looked. When my wife watches this video, she's gonna think I sound like such a nerd. She's fully aware of what she's gotten herself into, but it's just sometimes when I'm listening back to my recordings, I'm like, oh, how did I make a normal person like me? I don't think I could pull it off again, if I'm being honest. But anyway, got too real. It's fine. Never give up, gamers. Never give up. One popular method of shiny hunting in Pokemon X and Y was chain fishing. I remember seeing tons of videos of people finding shinies surprisingly quickly using this method, so I decided to try my luck at it. I can't remember exactly what I was hunting on Route 22 here, but it definitely wasn't this Magikarp. But of course, that was my next shiny. Now don't get me wrong, I think shiny Magikarp is pretty cool, but you can't deny that it is a bit of a disappointing shiny because it evolves into Gyarados, which is a shiny that everyone can get as part of the story in the Johto games. So I'll definitely keep this guy unevolved as my little gold fishing trophy. And my final shiny in this game was this cute little Poliwag I found while chain fishing on Route 16. This one was super exciting because I actually was hunting specifically for this shiny Poliwag. So I guess you could say this little lady is the result of my first ever successful shiny hunt. I can't remember exactly how many encounters this one took me, but I do remember it being somewhere between the 40 to 50 encounter range, which really isn't that bad. I do remember it feeling like it took way less time than I expected it to. Shiny Poliwag itself doesn't look super different from its original form, it's just a lighter shade of blue, but I still like it. I remember wanting to use this one on my team, but I had such a hard time choosing between evolving it into a Poliwrath or Politoed, which I think both have really great shiny forms, that I ended up just leaving it in my PC, and yeah, that's where it lived out its days. But I would really like to bring this Poliwag on an adventure of its own someday like I originally had planned. So let me know in the comments which shiny evolution you like better, and maybe I'll make it a part of some kind of follow-up video where I actually choose an evolution and use it on a team, either in another playthrough of Pokemon X and Y or another Pokemon game altogether. So there you have all of my shinies in Pokemon X version. It's definitely not the most impressive collection out there, but back in the day, obtaining each of these guys felt like such huge milestones in my Pokemon career. So that's why I wanted to share them here with you all today. It was really fun taking a trip down memory lane today with my old copy of Pokemon X, and I would love to make similar content in the future, so stick around if you'd like to see more from me. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.